Wait 10 seconds.
All right, I started.
Greetings, fellow armchair engineers. Sandy here, and we've got a very special podcast for you guys tonight. We're talking with Shane Hunt and Curt Tuckfield. They are the creators of the new Scary Stories, A Tribute to Terror book that is being released next January. Very honored to have these guys on. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Feeling great.
Yeah, January, maybe December, who knows?
Oh, the sooner the better, I'd say.
It always takes longer than you think to make art projects, like especially albums and things. But we're pretty close. So we're hoping for Christmas. Like maybe we can get it to everyone by Christmas. That's what I would hope. But we want to make it as good as possible. So you never can tell.
Yeah, I definitely know how that feels firsthand, art projects, stuff like that. But hey, I think this is going to turn out really well. The illustrations are just fantastic. I mean, we'll get into more of this. But guys, why don't you tell us a little about yourself? Curt, you want to start us off?
I do a lot of stuff. I'm kind of buffet like kind of guy, meaning I want a little bit of everything. So I'll do an album. I'll do like a spoken word thing. I'll do a comedy thing. I'll go rock climbing. And then it's like, no one's made this book. I want another book. I had dreams about it. So I start making that. Shane's kind of the same way. We've just done a lot of different, we geek out on things. And that's kind of what I've done since I was 12 is just, I would say I'm kind of just overly passionate about a lot of stuff. Like whether it be like tornadoes or Robert Wadlow, the tallest man who ever lived. I'll be like Shane, like, look at these pictures of Robert Wadlow. He was so tall. And then
he'll send me pictures like in the middle of the night of some weird new thing. It's like, check this out. I'm totally obsessed with this right now, dude.
Yeah, it's fun. I like, there's some people like someone like Gordon Ramsay, they just like are obsessed with one thing, just like food, and that's all they do. I couldn't really do that. There's too much out there that's interesting, but in this case, it's doing the texture and vibe of this book. But yeah, lots of stuff. We've been musicians and like composers for 20 years. It's just all over the place, honestly.
Well, that's great. You've got your fingers and everything. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I try.
I think that's
so. Ezra, let's just kind of like set the stage here because these guys that we have on here, they are in fact the author and illustrator for Scary Stories, A Tribute to Terror. Yeah. Now, Curt Tuckfield, you are the author of the book, and Shane Hunt, you are the illustrator. Do I have that right?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Please, God, tell me I have that right. I'd be really embarrassed if I didn't.
I did all of it. Shane is he's just paying me to take some credit.
I'm sorry. I guess I forgot to mention that.
You forgot to mention like the credits. You were just like, all right, Curt, tell us a little about yourself. It was like a game show.
I hadn't really written much out, so I was kind of just winging it.
It's all right.
Well, I just want to set the stage for like who exactly these people are that we're talking to.
And then I forgot to introduce you too. I'm sorry, Tiki.
Yes.
Yeah, I've just been sitting here like, all right. So now that we're all on the same page, Tiki here. Hey, hi, everybody. Guys, I am so happy to have you guys on just in like the 10 minutes that we've been talking to you off air. I think that you and I are like really on the same wavelength on a lot of ways, like kind of that cross faction of different fandoms. I am definitely in that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I am definitely in that curve myself. Like I love classic movies as much as I like Disney, as much as I like theme parks, as much as I like, like horror and folklore and hardcore horror movies and, just urban legends and stuff like that. It's in music and musical theater. It's just all wrapped up in my DNA. I'm just a very eclectic, like I've kind of embraced the fact that like it'd be absolutely impossible to reproduce a person who had the exact same like down the line list of interests that I do, because it's just such an eclectic mix. And I really embrace that about other people.
It's a blessing and a curse, isn't it?
It is. Right. It is. It is. Because if you guys are anything like me, I guess I tend to jump in and out of different stuff where I'll be really zoned in on one thing for about 3 months, and then it's on to the next thing, and then back to something else. You guys experience that at all?
Yeah, like right now there's moments where it starts to become overwhelming because you're doing like 5 of them at the same time. That's what I've been experiencing right now. Shane does a lot more. He has kids and a family, so that probably takes up a lot of his time. But
if you look at my like personal Instagram page where I post all my personal art, it's crazy. It jumps from like scary stories to cute like Japanese chibi to like realistic
nice.
Portraits to weird Zelda fan art. It's all over the place because I lose interest in things pretty quickly.
Sweet.
Which is why it's hard to keep interest on this project for 4 years.
Well, speaking of which, that's a good segue into you telling us a little bit about yourself, Shane. So
Sure.
how'd you get started in all this stuff? Not just in scary stories, but in art in general.
Yeah, well, I grew up reading Calvin and Hobbes, and I really kind of attribute
absolutely.
Yeah,
Sorry.
my love of art really stems from Bill Watterson, and just looking at those incredible drawings and paintings that he did. And also, honestly, scary stories to tell in the dark. Like from a very young age, I remember seeing them and wondering what they were, and they were super influential to just my love and interest in like the macabre and grotesque and surreal kind of thing. Didn't really watch a lot of horror movies or anything as a kid. Grew up here in Utah. Met Curt when I was like 14, 15, and he and I became best friends instantly. We've been friends for 20 years.
Nice.
And he really introduced me to like a lot of the best stuff. So Silent Hill, Twin Peaks, all the David Lynch stuff, just Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like all these movies I never would have seen normally. So I really attribute my love of all this stuff to Curt in a lot of ways.
He's also obsessed with Earthbound.
I didn't mention Earthbound, but yeah.
You didn't mention Earthbound. You gotta get that in there.
Yeah, the video game Earthbound, when I was like 11 years old, it came out, and that just shattered my entire brain and just opened my mind up to every possibility of storytelling and of art. And I mean, it's like one of the most creative, eclectic games I've ever seen. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, also, I do have a degree in animation from Brigham Young University, and I've just been a professional artist, illustrator, graphic designer for over a decade. So
do you normally do children's books, or is that what you make a living off of?
I make a living off graphic design and illustration mostly.
Okay.
Apparel and like apparel design, actually, strangely.
All right.
But I also do have a business on the side doing like children's books and covers for books and illustrations for tons of various random things.
Wow. That's terrific. So, Tiki, would you say there's anything else to really cover in this early portion of the show?
Well, we need to get to book nostalgia, but since we're kind of like setting the stage, let's go through Curt's journey.
Yes, absolutely.
My journey?
Yes, your arc, Curt. Imagine yourself in a biopic. Curt the movie.
Well, how much time you got, buddy? Anybody who knows me would just like laugh at that question.
I did. I laughed.
Yeah, we don't have time for that, but just my whole life I've just been ultra passionate about everything, and just I would say I'm just a big kid. I'm kind of a mix of like an old guy and a little kid all the time. Switches all over the place. But yeah, story arc that we'll let that be a mystery a bit.
Okay.
I don't know if we have time for that one, but yeah, I'm just a big like geek for a lot of things. I don't know. I've had a lot of weird things happen in my life, and some of these are in the book.
Supernatural things.
Yeah, there's a lot that there's moments in my life where it's like, oh, this has to come out now, and it's going to come out through this piece or this thing. It's like, like a moment where I was, my childhood memories of watching Journey to the Center of the Earth, 1959. Like that has to come out in a avant-garde modern classical MIDI album. I have to make that. I have to make that. And it comes out, and then it's like, oh, that felt good. Like I did that. So this one was about getting. I wanted more of this kind of texture, this kind of Stephen Gamble stories, elementary school texture, which was very nostalgic for me. But I got a lot of stuff out in the stories of just memories and stuff. Yeah, that's a complicated question you just asked. Can't answer you.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I just honestly, it's just kind of like my interview process. I like to get I like to set the stage for who we're talking to here. But you definitely some interesting nuggets along the way. I love I love both of your approach to fandom.
And
I
it
really
sounds
appreciate it.
And it sounds like you guys put a lot of your own personal life experiences into this book, which I think is just going to make it that much better, because that's the thing about writing or illustration. I think writing especially, you want to put yourself out there or try and adapt some portion of your personality or whatever into this whatever kind of story you're writing. I think that's
you have to. If you don't do that, it won't flow. Like you have to write what you know. You have to. It has to be like the deepest part of yourself talking, the thing that you're the most interested in at the moment, for it to flow, or else it'll just suck. Honestly.
Yeah.
Like that's how all the best stuff happen. Like otherwise it'd just be forcing it and it would be kind of fake.
Yeah. All right, guys, I'm dying to get into kind of the nitty gritty of what we all love about those books. I'm going to float one thing out there, and I'm not to kind of because this is like a big thing with me in these books and just kind of like elementary school in general. You mentioned the texture. Scholastic book fairs.
Scholastic book fairs. That's where a lot of people have said that they first saw these books.
Yeah. Hey, have either of you experienced those firsthand?
Oh yeah,
of course.
I don't know. Like, how old are you guys? About?
I'm about 30.
I'm 20.
20?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they still have the Scholastic book fair, but
they definitely did when I was a kid, sir.
Yeah.
We
Same
grew
with myself.
We grew up in the 80s and 90s, and it was definitely a thing. They had the books that had like the Caldecott awards for the illustrations, and yeah, that was a thing. We both saw these books in our school library. You saw it in your school library first, huh, Shane?
Yeah, and I let me interrupt really quick and say that I have 4 young kids, and we just had a Scholastic book fair last month, and my daughter bought
Nice.
Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So yeah, it's still going.
Man, that is like the height of my elementary school nostalgia right there. Is like, I mean, that was like it was like Christmas for like a book nerd in elementary school. I mean, just seeing like all the different displays, all the different series and everything. Yeah. Oh man, so much fun. Anyways,
but I did first see them in the actual library, not in the book fair.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I'm the same way. I'm pretty sure I saw them next to Goosebumps, and they were kind of like these weird, like almost like bootleg knockoffs of Goosebumps, and bootleg in a good way. You know what I mean? Like bootleg in a way where it's like, oh man, the presentation of it almost feels like it's meant to put you in a mindset as a little kid where, oh, I don't think I'm supposed to be reading this.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I first saw them, the first one was the first day of first grade. That was like, you're now allowed to go to the library. I went and I checked out the Boxcar Children, which that was a big influence on me. But there was this kid next to me who checked out the Scary Stories book, and I was looking at what he had, and I was just like, what the hell? Like, I was like, how do you have that? It instantly puts off this vibe. Like, even though you're allowed to have it, it seems like the adults aren't really aware of what it is, and you really shouldn't have it.
Right.
And I started checking it out. I started checking these books out like so much that they banned me from checking them out for a while because I was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh
No, I think they had the first two back at my elementary school, and they were just these old books just falling apart, sitting on the shelf. And there's either those things that everybody wanted to check out, and they were never there, or nobody wanted to get them because they were too scary.
Yeah, but they definitely predate Goosebumps by several years. Like the first one's 1980, so.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Which shocked me. I didn't realize they were that old up until about 5 years ago.
Yeah, they were, I think, 80, 82, and 91 was the last one. I remember, like, I had the first two for a while, and then in 6th grade, the third one showed up, and I got a note from the librarian. It's like, hey, you should come here. Like, I got something for you. I went and freaked out. But yeah.
And then the audiobooks, those were in the 90s, right?
Yeah, a lot of people talk about they have amazing memories of the audiobooks. I never had the audiobook. I'm like, well, how can you see the Gamble art if you're listening to it?
Yeah.
But I've heard some of them recently, and they're pretty good. A lot of people like really liked them.
So that's a good segue into this next bit of a conversation. This is again, it's a very generic question, but what's your favorite story from these 3 books?
That's a good question. So I really like the stuff that's more. So the first story is like The Big Toe, which is like I don't really like that type of story as much because it's not as. It doesn't get in your head. It's not as psychological.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find it as scary. But then you got a story like The Drum, and where the kids are tricked into being bad, and they get a new mother with a wooden tail. That's creepy. Like Dead by the Window from Moore. That's a creepy story. I like the ones that are just a bit more abstract and psychological than the ones that are about someone coming and they end with "and now scream." Like,
yeah,
but a lot of people love those. So I don't know. I go more for the psychological stuff.
What about you, Shane?
Well, I got to be honest. Like, I didn't really read the books. Like, when I was younger, I read a lot of the stories, but for me, it was like 99% about the art.
Oh yeah.
And I would read the stories, and they'd be kind of interesting and cool. There is one story that really sticks out to me, but again, it's really because of the art, and it's in the second book, more scary stories to tell in the dark, and it's called Somebody Fell from a Loft.
Oh yes.
So it's like this first person story by this grizzled, like salty sea man kind of captain guy, and he's just telling the story about this guy who was on ship with him, and then suddenly this creature like falls out of the loft. No one even saw it coming because it was so like foggy or something, and this just like creature falls and lands on the deck of the ship, and no one knows what it is or who it is.
Covered in oilskins
And like oilskins. I didn't know what that was. So I freaked out when I read that because like, what is that? Like his skin is all oily and black or something. Like, what is that? I don't know what that means. And it was just kind of weird. And I just imagined like some sort of monster. And then I turned the page, and there it is. There's this screaming face. It's like smiling, and it's got its arms and legs wrapped around this victim, and it's falling to death, and it's loving it. It's just so happy to be like killing you. And that image burned into my brain, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah, it's Somebody Fell from a Loft, or someone. Yeah, that is one of Stephen Gamble's like best works by far. It's so perfect. It's really creepy. Like if anyone's listening, just like look that one up because it's the face on it and the way you're not really sure if he's in the water or if he's like falling or if he's. I mean, it's very abstract, and I don't know, that face is like quintessential Stephen Gamble.
Yeah, it really is.
I liked it when he took something like Oh Susanna and put this completely random picture to it, like with a horse head and a rocking chair. It makes no sense, but it's just so cool to look at.
Very good comment. That's
yeah. that's one thing I've really struggled with, is like trying not to interpret these so perfectly, like literally, and trying to throw in some extra things. I did an illustration that I call Dead End. It goes to a story called When I Wake Up.
Yeah.
And I tried really hard to, oh yeah, that's it right there. I tried really hard to kind of emulate that weird surrealism where like they're just objects placed oddly, and
a lot of like grays, a lot of kind of like white space, kind of like it breaks the rules of art in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any kind of plane or like unified perspective. It's just, and that was really hard for me because that's opposite. I mean, we'll talk about that later, but
yeah, this was one of the first pieces I saw of yours when I first discovered this project, and this is that's what stuck out to me, is kind of the abstract look of it. Like there's a dead end sign back there. There's an eye at the bottom. There's this bunk bed, but it's outside in the woods. But then there's like a big oven behind this moon. It's really strange, but it looks really fascinating.
Yeah, it's got a little Easter egg is my old address at the top. You can't really see it. We need to bump that up, but
yeah, we'll make
it's above that like brick area.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, kind of, very vaguely.
Yeah, we gotta bump that up a bit. I've gotten so I've gotten so picky on this stuff. I'm just like, it's got to be better. It's got to be even more texture.
And none of these images on here are done yet, but we're getting there.
Well, that one's pretty done, I'd say. Some of them are but they're There's when you go and start looking at his work, you're just like, there's always more. Like there's always something more. It's some other like level or variable that you didn't. Oh, he's so hard to figure out.
I love this one because it's just this weird contorted like face, but it's not a face. And I think that's one thing you really captured really beautifully, is just kind of that really incredibly bizarre, macabre type of surrealism in his work, where it just makes no sense, but you can't stop looking at it.
Yeah.
The way I've always seen his work is there's another dimension. Maybe it's a dream world or the land of the dead. And his art is just you looking through a little peephole at it for a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
And it looks, from your perspective, all weird. Like, it's definitely very otherworldly. It's very abstract. And I'd say Gamble is definitely like a very serious artist rather than just a children's illustrator. I think
absolutely
really should be more in museums than in just a book.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm surprised because he really hasn't gotten too much notoriety outside of these books, and that's a real shame because he's got a real talent.
Yeah,
has there ever been like a traveling art show of his work or anything like that? Any like museum?
You can buy some of his paintings on Etsy right now. They're like $3, $4, $5,000.
Oh, okay.
Like there's some of his like watercolor stuff. It's very abstract. Like you can't even tell what it is. It's
right.
Abstract.
I actually worked at the Walt Disney Family Museum for a while, and obviously not a place where these would go, but I do have experience. Like I know the ins and outs of like museum galleries and rotations and stuff. And I don't know, there's got to be like some place where these could be showcased at least for like a temporary amount of time. I don't know. He's
a guy that is very reclusive and private, and there's not that much known about him actually. So
yeah, that's what I found. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know. I'd love to talk to him, but he might tell me to like get out of his face or something. But
right, of course, yeah.
Total mystery.
Yeah, I think it's much like the Goosebumps covers, which weren't nearly as scary as these. But that's another thing that's Scholastic.
I mean, Goosebumps covers were like very, they were very rooted in a certain reality. They were creepy. They definitely had cool imagery attached, but none of them were really all that surreal in a way where like we were saying about scary stories.
Goosebumps was like, yeah,
Go ahead.
is a little different. Like, I don't think has anyone even ever died in a Goosebumps book. I mean, these books have like cannibalism and like people getting skinned, and there's a reason they were the most controversial books of the 90s. They were the most banned books of 90 to 1999, at least for kids.
Scholastic did do these, right? They did publish these, right?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So they do have. They must have all the original pieces of artwork, and they did Goosebumps too. So they must have all this stuff in their archive. So it'd be really great if they could distribute those into some kind of gallery.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I have no idea what the legality is of that. Like who, like if Scholastic owns the art, or I don't know.
I can tell you guys,
speculate
from an illustrator's point of view.
Okay.
It's very rare that an illustrator will actually give original art to the publisher.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, usually the illustrator will hold on to their own art and will give basically usage rights to the publisher.
Okay.
Oh, so Gamel's probably got all these put away in a box in his attic somewhere.
Or he burned it because he doesn't want to be associated with it.
I'm pretty sure that Alvin Schwartz's son Peter has some paintings or some drawings framed on his walls of his house.
That would be awesome.
I'm pretty sure he does. Because I actually worked on the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark documentary.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to talk to Peter quite a bit through that. And yeah, he's got some of those originals. I doubt he'd be willing to sell them, but
oh yeah, that's something we should talk about as well as I think we should touch on the movie a tiny little bit. That obviously take up a whole chunk of time, but yeah, the documentary. I almost forgotten about that. I haven't actually seen that yet, but I know you did some animation for that, right?
Yeah, this was about 3 years ago when I was kind of, and I don't want to, put myself down here, but it was definitely early in the process of kind of trying to figure out this style and this, figuring out how to do the Scary Stories stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, I don't know. I'm proud of the work I did for it, and I think it looks great, but it was definitely early in the process. I'll just put it that way.
Now, there's a lot of recreations of Gamel's work online, and most of it looks it ranges from either decent to good, or just bad. But with these, I feel like you somehow you've kind of cracked the code here, and you've kind of got it down to a science of what actually makes one of these drawings tick the way they're supposed to.
So Curt and I have probably spent, what would you say, Curt, maybe like 500 hours just analyzing everything that we can think of with this art. Like, I kind of, his little hairs exactly like that. They need to end with they end with a little whip, like they're curving slightly at the very tip. Oh, and also, he never outlines the shape of the hand. Like it's just shaded. And we've talked about this. We've analyzed this stuff for hundreds of hours, and it's just been kind of a nightmare, but a glorious, wonderful, delightful nightmare.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I'm trying to understand his the way he does this stuff. Like, if you look at the first story in More Scary Stories, something was wrong. Like there's a guy holding a phone, and below the phone are like 4 lines coming out of the base. What is that? I have no idea. Like, what? There's just weird variables that make no sense, and they're all different, and you can't really put them all into a list and understand them. You can understand some of them though, you can't generally use outlines. Like, he doesn't. If you look at the ones people do online, they'll make an outline, like they're drawing a cartoon, and they'll kind of fill it in. He doesn't do it like that. It's all just like patches of blurry and shading, and then it goes from blurry to sharp over here, and it's got this thing here. And I feel like it's almost like he was in some kind of drunken trance or something when he made it, because I don't know if there's a lot of thought. I think it's all just pure flow. I think it's very pure art, But
Well, it's definitely. I mean, as an illustrator, I can tell you that it's very obviously coming from a place of absolute like discipline and understanding of fundamental art principles and a mastery of realism and accuracy and stuff. And what he's doing is somehow just bending everything and changing everything just enough to make it feel surreal and bizarre.
it looks like it has all that mastery and that realism, but it also looks like a little kid drew it at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like a mix of between the two. Like, so yeah, understanding that has been hard.
And I told you guys earlier that I grew up reading Calvin and Hobbes, and really like my artistic sensibilities are definitely more inspired by Bill Watterson and cartoonish, stuff like that. And so my natural inclination is to cartoonize and outline and simplify and draw clarity, use
Of course, yeah.
super clear shapes and forms and communicate very quickly what it is. And so trying to do this has been the hardest thing, the most challenging artistic endeavor in my life, because I'm having to unlearn so many things, so many principles that I've learned. The way light and shadow work, the way anatomy, human anatomy, just I have to unlearn all these things and force myself to think a different way. And it's been super fun, but hard.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like just a really, really rewarding project, especially because you're not just coming into it as someone who's, obviously like you've cut your teeth in the art and illustration world for a long time before this project. So I would be super intimidated coming into this like, oh, I'm going to just like, I'm an amateur artist and I'm just going to pick up a pencil and just do some of this artwork.
Yeah.
But what I respect about your craft is how you're basically, like you said, you're kind of like deconstructing the very professional way in which you look at the medium to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's been crazy. I've loved seeing them come out. A lot of these, like this one you're seeing here, like Shane came
This
up.
one might be my favorite.
Yeah, Shane completely came up with that whole thing. Most of the other ones start with an image that kind of starts in my head, and I'm like, I get with Shane, I'm like, can you make this happen? And like, how can we make this happen? Because I can't, I do a lot of art stuff, but not illustration. I can't draw.
Right.
Like that's the one thing I can't do. My brother's great at it. Shane's great at it. But so I'm like, dude, like, what can we do with this?
Yeah, the origin of this book. First of all, Curt had a dream about it, and just saw it in a vision that he had. There was a fourth book in the library, and that kind of was his impetus for wanting to do it.
Yeah, we didn't put it up and could see all this art.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
But the origin. But the origin for me, strangely enough, came when I got the new iPad Pro that came out like 4 years ago. The first edition of the iPad Pro, and there was this app on it called Procreate, and it was just a drawing app. And there was a brush on there, and I started messing around with it, just having fun. And whatever I created on the page felt and looked like in the beginnings of a Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark illustration. And that kind of opened my mind to the possibility of doing this whole thing. And so I tried it and I messed around with it. And the first drawing I did was this clown. I don't think I sent you that image, but you can find it on our website. And I did it because they just announced the first It movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I did it for fun in that way. But yeah, it really started digitally on the iPad, and that's how kind of I realized that it might be possible to not get there 100%, because I don't think it's possible, but to get as close as I could.
There's no way this could have happened without that iPad and the program, because like Stephen Gamble did all this stuff. Honestly, I mean, I can write stuff, and Alvin Schwartz did all this journalism and he wrote it down, but technically the hardest thing by far is the art. It's way hard. Like, but Stephen Gamble did it like he just like had a piece of canvas, and he was blowing wet graphite around, with a straw and painting and drawing all this stuff. He just did it. Like I don't think that it could be done that way by basically anyone now. Like we had to go and just be like, oh, that doesn't look right. Let's change it. And the only way to do that was, with that iPad and that program.
Yeah, it doesn't really, like, I'm not trained in watercolors and ink washes and graphite all that much. Like, I've done plenty of traditional art, but I'm mostly a digital artist. And so I really had to, figure these out digitally before I started any kind of traditional elements. So I'd kind of go through and we'd nail down the illustration digitally on the iPad. And then I would go and recreate it with graphite and ink wash and watercolor and stuff like that. Get it so that it has that texture, so that it at least feels a little bit more like the originals. And then I'll scan that in and make some final adjustments, and that'll be usually the final piece that ends up in the book.
And you created your own brush strokes and things like that you put online for available purchase, right?
Yeah, just because I was getting bombarded constantly by requests. Everyone wants a brush to solve their problems artistically. And so I created like a special brush that just makes those long stringy tendrils that Gamma likes to do. And then I did one that's like a cloudy wash. And yeah, I made those available. If you want, you can get them on our website. But
thank you. Thank you so much for not being that artist that wants to hide all of his secrets, because there's so many
videos of like tutorials of me showing people how to do it and stuff.
That's really amazing, because there's just so many people that they discover something, they want to keep it all to themselves, and
for me, it's like, it doesn't matter if I tell people like how to do it, because really it's going to take anyone who actually wants to go on this route and try to figure it out themselves. It's going to take a long time no matter what. There's no tutorial, there's no brush that can just do it. You have to like understand deeply on a level. So
because there's a soul to it, it's not just a brush. There's an actual passion behind it.
Yeah.
So I guess now would be an appropriate time to talk about the movie a little bit, since the illustrations tie into the movie so heavily.
Talking about the documentary or the new?
The new movie that was just released with Del Toro as the producer.
Right.
First thoughts when you guys saw this?
Better than it would be. I've had a lot of people ask that question.
Yeah.
At a convention lately, or recently, and everyone was like, "What did you think of the movie?" Better than I thought it would be, for sure. Usually, like Shane and I, like, one of the reasons we put so much into this is that we're tired of like people screwing up stuff. Like they come by, they take Ghostbusters and they don't understand anything about it, or like some video game they try to turn into a movie and it's terrible, and
Resident Evil.
It gets old after a while. But that one, I personally think, and I've always thought that it was a weird idea to try to turn into a movie. I'm like, well, how are you going to make that? Like, the art is a big part of it. How are you going to make that into a movie? There's a lot of it that I didn't really buy, and it wasn't. I wouldn't say it's like, oh, it brought me right back to the books. But there was some. I thought there was some awesome parts to it. I thought a lot of the practical effects, and like the part in the hospital with the pale lady, like from.
Oh, that was terrifying. That was legitimately like one of the most suspenseful scenes. Yeah.
I was like, this part's great. I thought the Mitai Dodie Walker part was great.
Mm-hmm.
The story that tied it together, I thought was kind of weak, but yeah, it's a lot better than it could have been. I was expecting it to just be like completely worthless, but Shane probably felt about the same way, right?
Yeah, I watched well, first of all, I got to say, I have a lot of respect for the director, Andre Overdahl.
He did that.
Other stuff he's done. So, and then Guillermo del Toro, he said something really cool. He was asked why it wasn't an anthology film, and I think a lot of people criticized it for not being an anthology film. And he said, an anthology film is only as strong as the weakest story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the unfortunate truth about anthology things. And there's definitely going to be a weaker story in there. So it's kind of smart. And I think they had to do it the way they did it. It wouldn't have worked to do the anthology thing. Although I think maybe it would have been a better mini series where each episode was a different story.
I thought it would be cool if it was more like Eraserhead and actually looked like the world that you see in the books.
Oh man,
Yes.
that'd be crazy.
That would not have been marketable, but that would have been
House
great.
Eraserhead has like those weird flowers that are metal, and you're like, that looks like Stephen Gamble. But
Yeah, I was talking with a friend earlier back when the movie came out in August, and Creep Show came up, and because that was, you know, they had the short stories within the bigger context of the movie, but I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that could have gone with it. Again, I haven't seen the documentary, but that seems like it's definitely a lot.
it's solid. It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
I liked it.
So how did you get involved in that, Shane?
So I'd been working on the Scary Stories book with Curt for about a year. And then I heard that someone was making a documentary. So I contacted them and said, hey, here's a book I'm making. You may want to feature it in this documentary. And that was about it. And then a few months later, I didn't hear anything. And then a few months later, he contacts me back, the director, Cody Merrick. He said, hey, do you know how to do animation? And I said, well, I have a degree in animation. So he said, well, I need some animated sequences. If you're willing, I would love your help in illustrating and animating some sequences for this documentary. So that was about it. And he hired me and paid me, and I produced them and sent them his way. It took a few months of work. And that's all I saw. That's all I knew about it. And then it came out like 2.5 years later. And I thought, that was the work I submitted. That's pretty good, I guess.
Again, I still have to check that out. I feel kind of ridiculous for not having seen it yet.
Well, it's weird because we really tried to get Stephen Gamble to make any kind of statement, and the director even sent a message to him, like begging, like, this is it, Stephen, this is your last chance, like, here's your opportunity to speak to your fans and make a statement about these books. Please come do this for us. And all we got back was a letter from his publicist, and it just said, Stephen does not want to have anything to do with Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark ever again.
Oh wow.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I didn't realize it was that serious.
Yeah. So we were like, all right, well, I guess he doesn't want to.
Do you think he regrets doing it? I mean, I don't want you to put words in his mouth or anything,
No.
or
Yeah,
That's
on
kind
his
of
behalf,
the vibe we kind of have. I mean, he did it, and then it became like the most banned book. And then he did he's like a children's illustrator. I'm guessing that he was like, I don't want the thing I'm most known to be as a children's illustrator to be this thing that people find disgusting and like, offensive.
Yeah.
Yep. These illustrations are very dark, and it's debatable as to whether they were ever for children. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I would say that these books may not really be for kids. Like, that's what made them really cool. So I'm guessing it's like that, but who knows?
Well,
Yeah, it's impossible to say.
Well, so Curt, tell us about your writing process for this, because again, you mentioned you had some personal stuff you incorporated into these stories. So could you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah. So my childhood is kind of my muse for basically everything I do that's artistic most of the time. Like, if I'm not just, it's all about going back to a vibe or a texture that I experienced when I was a kid and seeing where it goes in the imagination. Like, I feel like to come up with an idea, you need an emotional lure, and you're sort of casting out these emotional lures and you're catching fish, which are these ideas. Like, I think that's how all the best ideas come. They're not things that you come up with, but rather things that you catch, or that that already existed out there unformed. Like, if you want to make a good idea, that's where it's going to come from. If you try to force it, it won't work. So I go back to my old neighborhood, my old house, things that happened when I was a kid. It's like I'm over at my friend's house when I'm 9 years old, and we're all over there playing video games, and he has this old house, and it kind of looks like it's from the Goonies, and it's raining, and his brother starts telling us that the house is floating, and he's like messing with our heads. I go back to that moment, and I just close my eyes, and I like holographically project it around me in my imagination, basically. And I just sit there, and then all of a sudden it like I start typing, and it comes out. And it's a really fun process. It's like giving birth to something. All these stories were most of these stories came out that way. Some of them are based on, like, the first chapter, Nightmares, is nightmares I had between the age of like 5 and 8. Like, I'm known for having I would almost call it like a dream disorder, honestly. But those are some of the first ones. Just like I'll just be pulled to a place like a mall or a park that I used to go to, and I'll just go there in my mind, and it'll start to happen. Like, these ideas will come out, and it's been a blast. Like, I feel like a lot of stuff that's like you kind of can't get past, the places that used to go and the things that used to happen.
The nostalgia.
Yeah, the nostalgia of it. You turn it into this big adventure that's emotional and scary, and you put it in a book, and it kind of therapeutically comes out. And that's where all these came from, honestly, most of them. And it's a pretty powerful way of coming up with ideas. I think a lot of these are really pretty scary.
Well, there are, you gotta give credit to the ones and the stories that we're putting in the book that are based on true stories and folklore. There are some of them.
So you have that kind of stuff that comes from there, and then you have like Shane and I were both Eagle Scouts, so we up here in the Uintas in Utah. Like, I'm at scout camp, and this Ute medicine, like a storyteller, this like Native American guy comes, tells us a story about local Skinwalker Ranch, which is right where he lived.
Oh my God, Skinwalkers! Oh geez.
Yeah, like this is the whole Ballard, Utah Skinwalker Ranch thing kind of peaked in like 1996. The supposed activity. He was there, like, trying to help the family at the time, and he ended up just like with me and a few of my friends in Scoutmaster telling us about it. That's in the book.
Oh, wow.
So that is definitely folklore. There's a number of these that are definitely folklore. Alvin Schwartz, the original author who passed away like almost 30 years ago, he was more of a journalist who went around and talked to, like, I imagine, like, grizzled old miners in Appalachia, and like with a tape recorder, and asked them to tell me your stories that you've heard. And
I think most of his stories he found in a library. He was actually a researcher mostly.
Yeah, I've heard he got him all over the place. Like, but for me, now that it's almost 2020, it's probably not as easy to make a book that way, and I don't think it would have been as good to make it pure folklore, because so many of the stories have already been told.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mix of that, of the stuff that I experienced, and some real stuff that happened. And I mean, like, I grew up in a haunted house. Like, we had to move it. It became intolerable. Like, there's some stuff of that in here. A bunch of stuff. It's a big sampler. I'd say it's scarier than the originals, and more of a kind of overall spooky adventure or journey reading through it.
Nice.
Would you say that's because it's more personal, so you could inject more of more, I guess, more detailed descriptions of certain things and events?
Well, the original books are written for about fourth graders.
Yeah.
I pushed I keep that tone because it's part of what makes it surreal. Having these really messed up illustrations and subjects, but it's written on this grade school level. I keep that tone, but I push it up a little bit. I push it up notch it up a few grades.
Uh-oh.
I notched up a few grades to try to have more detail because you can make it scarier if you can make it a little bit longer, a little more detail. So it's kind of just the concept of the original books, but maxed out and kind of amplified in a new way, I guess.
Wow. We just keep talking about this stuff. I can't wait to read it.
Mm-hmm.
I really can't wait.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
So, Tiki, is there anything else think we should talk about? Shane, Curt, is there anything else you guys would like to mention before we move on to the next topic we have, which would be the community?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Shane beats his children. No, I don't know. Like, I think we've kind of covered the basic idea. I mean, we could probably talk about this forever, but it's,
we can move on.
in the end, you gotta kind of read it and experience it. Like, you don't want to give too much away, right?
The only thing I'll say about the book and about the writing is it's not gonna. It's the word I use to describe our book is surreal. Our book definitely, the themes of our book largely revolve around kind of abandonment, fears, general fears that children tend to have, being lost or abandoned, or
there's a lot of stuff from perspective of children, because I think that's scarier.
Yeah.
If you're an adult and there's something outside, you and your friends might go and just beat it up. Like, but if you're kids, like,
exactly, because as adults we're trained not to fear. We're trained to be, the people that comfort the kids, and so we've kind of turned off that part of our brain that allows ourselves to be afraid. And in order for us to be scared again, I think we have to allow ourselves to become as children, kind of, and give ourselves permission to imagine the scenario we're reading as real, and imagine ourselves there, and put ourselves in that position and imagine that we're children. And I really think that that's how we can enjoy scary media as adults, because otherwise it's just fun. It's not scary, but it's fun.
Yeah, people grow up way too fast. They're way too eager to become adults. So I think people should be more balanced and be able to see from that perspective that they had when they were kids. I think a lot of people forget it.
Well, terrific. Tiki, is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Well, just to piggyback off that point, I can very much relate to that, because I am someone who, proudly has not lost my sort of like sense of wonder, and,
right.
And a lot of people around me have, and a lot of people around me are just like, why are you still into this stuff? You need, like, and I'm just like, I'm still into it because it's me. It's my identity. It's what I grew up with. It's what I'm passionate about,
Right.
And I'm totally with you. I wish more people would kind of like, stick to those things that they loved and like really kind of like thrive in them.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people after about 1980, like people that from that generation, kind of the X, Y millennial, they have that, and it's kind of a blessing and a curse, like there's a lot of nostalgia, and that's the source of a lot of amazing things, but it's also some people get way too stuck in it. Like, I know we all got stuck in that a little bit, but it's probably a lot better than just growing up. And I know people, I meet people who I used to go to elementary school with. We were friends for years. They don't remember me. They don't remember anything from their childhood. They have
Right.
What happened before they were like 15 years old. Like they lost that perspective completely, and that seems like like a living death, honestly.
No, I mean, that's crazy to think about. I can totally just totally envision everyone that I went to school with in elementary school. Easily, clear as day. I could rattle off my top 5 friends pretty easily. But yeah, you're right. I don't know if they would even register who I was if I passed them on the street these days. It's weird. It's a weird concept to think about.
Yeah, perspective is everything, and some people they lose all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's this stigma about being, childish, and I think there's a difference between having childlike wonder or being childlike and being childish. We're adults,
Totally
can handle adult responsibilities. I have 4 kids of my own, and I take care of them, obviously. But keeping a childish or a childlike wonder is, it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got to get my chart shirt really quick, guys. Tiki, if you want to bring us into the next conversation piece, that'd be great, all right?
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
no problem. All right, so let's talk about the community that's kind of sprung up around these books and around the project you guys are doing. What was that like for you guys? Kind of sort of everyone was imagining this potential, next book in the series. I'm sure you're not the only person to have that very specific dream of going to the library and oh my God, there's another one.
Yeah.
So what was it like to really kind of take on that public mantle of all right, guys, no one else is going to do it?
We found out that I think we were working on this for about 1.5 years, and we started to find out that there were actually some other people who had already tried to do this.
Oh, okay.
There's a book called Corpse Cold. There's a book called
Nightmare Soup.
There's 3 of them, right?
There's Nightmare Soup.
Nightmare Soup. What's that one? The
Scary Stories to Tell If You Dare or something.
Yeah. So other people have tried to do it, and so
it's done awesome work too. Corpse Cold is awesome. If you guys check that out, Chad Worrell did the Chad.
I remember.
Oh, I can't remember. Dang it! It just left me. Anyway, he did the art for that, and he's been a good friend of ours and a good friend of mine, and he's been pretty influential actually in helping me understand Gamel's style because he's been really great at it.
Yeah. So other people tried to do it, but they didn't try to nail it. They were just they were trying to doing something that was kind of inspired by it, that was inspired by the style, but they weren't this is the 4th book, and we're not saying that this is the 4th book either, but I think we were trying to go more, straight to making it like that. But
if anything, this is as close to a true spiritual successor as we're likely to get.
Yeah, I would say so. The community is interesting because almost everyone I know from basically 43, 44 and under seems to know these books. But it's a thing where only a certain percentage of them actually know there were 3 and they had them and want another one. There's plenty of people who can identify the book. A lot of people see our book and they think that that's the original book because they're actually, they're aware of it, they don't know enough about it they weren't oh, I have everything memorized.
Yeah, so we did a convention a few weeks ago, and it was amazing how many people came up and said, "Oh, you made those books? I love those books." It's
oh man,
no.
So
you're the original author.
You got it all wrong.
The first book was written a couple of years, 2 years before I was born, dude.
Right.
But I don't know. There's just when you get into this kind of fandom, you find that it's like we're big fans of Frank Zappa. It turns out tons of people know who that is, but of those people, only a certain percentage know this amount and this amount. And when you come down to who is someone who would really appreciate or know everything, you got a tiny fraction of those people. And it's the same thing with this book. It's hard to say how many people would be on board with this because it's, so far, I mean, we've done 300 pre-orders, and so there's some people that were just ravenous about this, but I don't really know how big the community is that had all three and like was obsessed with them.
Uh-huh.
The community that knows about the book in general is huge. So it's doing the convention was fun because we actually got to like talk to people who were fans, and there are people come up and just flip out, and it wasn't a thing like on the internet where you're just seeing the residual effects of fans. You're actually talking to them. So it was interesting. It's hard to say like what the answer to that question really is. What do you think, Shane?
Yeah, I think the community is strong because we all feel unified in it.
Oh yeah, sure.
When you meet someone who had that experience and read the book, you instantly know you connect with them on a very deep, fundamental level, and that's what makes the community really powerful and fun and exciting. And the response to our book has been like 99% positive. Like,
yeah,
there are a few people that hold the book so dear to their heart that they see our effort as kind of like a I don't know, a travesty, like some sort of a sin or a crime against Alvin Schwartz. But the vast majority of people definitely are like way supportive of our project, and it's
nice.
really fun.
The community for this kind of thing is very interesting right now because like there was the documentary that came out, there's the movie that came out, this is coming out. We didn't all get together and say, hey, let's ride this wave and like make it all at the same time. It just happened to happen.
Yeah.
Which means that like there is some kind of thing where everyone felt something similar at the same time and started making it.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not related at all. We didn't know about each other's things. And like, I mean, in 2 weeks, Shenmue 3 is coming out. The new 7th Guest, the 13th Doll just came out. Like, there's a lot of projects that are just coming out right at this moment that are based on things that happened decades ago from our childhoods. And it's not a conspiracy. It's just this weird like synchronicity,
like pop culture symbiosis almost.
Yeah, I think people in our generation kind of got like jaded of after, especially like people that grew up and became adults, just like right around 9/11. Like if you became an adult right then, and then a few years went by, you're going to look back at the time before that and be like, that was pretty sweet. Like, and it kind of builds up into this nostalgia bubble that is within a big community. And at a certain point when people are like, all right, this is time to kind of revisit the last, century and millennium that we grew up in, like, and it all happened right now. So community for this is definitely as strong as it's going to get at this point.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Is there anything else on that?
Well, I just want to put it out there. I had this on my calendar. I was one of your first backers on the Kickstarter. I really just get to show how much how excited I am for this book.
Thank you.
And since these books did have audiobooks, have you guys ever considered doing an audiobook after this gets released?
No,
or is that kind of not on the radar at this moment?
So what happened was, it's kind of cool. I was just like hanging out one day and I randomly got this message, and it's from this guy named AJ Dana. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. He does he's currently doing the voice of the ghost host for the Haunted Mansion.
Oh.
And he contacted me and said, hey, I would love to do an audiobook of your book because
oh my gosh,
I'm
yes,
such a huge fan of your work, and the project looks awesome. And so we decided to set a stretch goal for our Kickstarter that if we can raise $10,000 for the book, then we'll do an audiobook. And we did. We hit 10,000 between the Kickstarter and like the convention and external sales. We hit 10,000. And so yeah, we're going to be producing an audiobook with the voice of the ghost host.
Well, he seems like he's just like a totally legit voice actor. Like he does a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, he's totally pro.
So where does he do the ghost host voice? Is it one of the parks or?
So like whenever there's a special event, like
Okay.
I think there was the Haunted Mansion anniversary just last year. They had like a bunch of parties and dances, and like they featured his voice for those.
Maybe video games or like DVDs or something. I don't know.
Oh, Tiki, I guess Corey Burton's kind of retired now, huh?
The original guy who did the voice.
Well, Corey Burton, who took up the mantle from
Paul Frees.
Paul Frees, yeah.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know there was another guy besides Corey Burton, so that's news to me.
And that sounds absolutely perfect. I mean, can you imagine? I can't imagine. Anyways, so when is that going to be released? The audiobook?
Well, we've been working with AJ, and after we finish the text, we'll send it to him, and he has a studio, and he said he's just going to pump them out the stories one by one and send them our way. So.
And is there music being done for this as well?
What's that?
Is there music being done for this as well?
Well, go ahead.
We never got to that point yet. Like we're dude, I don't know. Like we're kind of, this whole process has been kind of a new kind of wave that we're just kind of riding, and we haven't got to that yet. But when we do, I don't know, like it will make sure it's really great. Music, I don't know, Shane. What do you think right now?
Well, I mean, we'll definitely do some music as backing, but I think we're gonna try to go the route of the original audiobooks, where it was mostly the guy's voice with, and I can't remember his name. With just
he was the Heat Miser. The Heat Miser.
Yeah, limited synth behind it. Maybe like some like Sound Blaster 16 kind of style. But Curt actually wrote a song that's going to be in the book. You know how the original books had some songs?
Oh, yeah.
We've music and lyrics to a song that we'll be putting in the original book. So there's some music there.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're finishing our 20th album, me and my friends. So,
oh my God,
music is something that we've done for 20 years, and if something needs music, we'll come up with that, and it'll be like the new musical project. But I don't know. I haven't studied it enough or thought about it yet enough. We're not quite at that point. Probably like a month or the next few weeks we'll start talking about it seriously.
Wow. Well, yeah. Again, I can't wait. Now we're getting pretty close to the wrapping up here. I know Tiki, you wanted to talk about folklore just a little bit. You've got some stories of your own you wanted to share, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, just in general, I kind of wanted to loop this conversation back around to like why we like folklore to begin with, because I think at the heart of it, that's where our love of these stories comes from.
Yeah.
And I think it's really fascinating because, of course, Curt, you're talking about like really drawing experiences from your life. And I'm sure that there's a lot of, elements of your life and, like hometown stuff and urban legends that you're drawing from.
Oh, yeah.
But the funny thing is,
folklore comes from anyway. Like it's all folklore in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think a lot of the reason people like it is that, I like imagining what happened to people from the past. Honestly, there's something like romantic about it, or adventurous, or there's a weird texture about thinking about what might have happened to someone in the forests. Like in 1920, or on a farm when a tornado came in 1963 in Kansas, or stuff that the past is kind of spooky and it's kind of adventurous and interesting. I think that's it's the stories of the past.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I absolutely agree. I mean, the past, I think, is definitely kind of. We know everything except we don't. It's a big enigma, because we're constantly progressing forward in culture, and the further we go, the more we tend to forget about what's already happened.
Exactly.
And it's really fascinating to think about, especially if you look at. In my case, I love watching old movies. Like I just finished Vertigo a couple hours ago with Jimmy Stewart.
That's weird. I just watched that movie yesterday.
I also watched Breathless from 1960 earlier this morning as well. What is that? It's a French old French movie. But yeah, all these people in these movies I think they're all dead. Alfred Hitchcock, he's dead. He's long gone.
Oh, yeah.
All these people. So it's really fascinating to look at these people in these black and white or even these color movies and just think, wow, these people, they're not around anymore, but their performances, they're still there, and you can still think about what these.
I mean, to talk to a recent example with that, Ezra, I just watched a movie called Before the Devil Knows You're Dead with Philip Seymour Hoffman. And man, it just kind of like reopened the wound of losing Philip Seymour Hoffman at such a young age. And, but, like even like to kids who didn't grow up with him, because I was in high school when Philip Seymour Hoffman was kind of like at his peak. So, for kids who are like too young to even remember him, it is one of those crazy things where like, one generation removed, Philip Seymour Hoffman is going to be kind of like this, this legendary actor who was cut down too soon. Whereas 10 years ago, he was just a really, really good actor and kind of on the top of Hollywood, and it's, that's just one example. I mean, and this is just the one industry of Hollywood, because there's a bunch of folklore surrounding that, like Heath Ledger. I mean, everything. Yeah. But just generally speaking, I mean, I think it's fascinating how it like almost without fail, every small town has some sort of urban legend, folklore, like something, the house at the end of the block or the murder house or, just some sort of like unsavory element to the past. And it's like like the past is just impossible to keep clean, like because of pure human nature, there's always going to be shady stuff happening throughout history. And I don't know, like you said, just kind of like weaving into the fabric. Go ahead.
The past is very creepy, has a creepy vibe because you can't see it and you can't reach it. It's gone.
Yeah.
You can hear about it. It's somewhere. It's sort of like the past is kind of like the darkness. There's something there, and you can kind of get a sense of what it is, but you can't go there. And so it gives it this creepy vibe.
The past is the past is chilling, no doubt. I mean, just looking at old black and white photos, those are people, but there's no going back.
They're all gone. Yeah. So I think that's what folklore is about. It's that vibe that people love, the mysterious and what they can't really touch anymore. It's all about that.
Well, after you get your book, where do you guys, see yourself with your future projects? Do you guys just plan to go back to doing normal, everyday stuff?
I've never really done normal, everyday stuff. I just get like an itch to do something, and I start doing it. And most of the time, no one will, I'll write a book or something, like no one will read it. But the process of doing it was satisfying to me. I don't know. I do a very introverted, introspective kind of thing, but there's always going to be some kind of art project. As far as this goes, who knows, like in a couple of years, we might be like, hey, let's just make like a smaller book and with some more stories and some illustrations because we have an itch for it, or maybe we're done with it. I'm not sure, but definitely music and art and a lot of different stuff. Writing, I'm sure it'll be all over the place.
Yeah, same here. I'm kind of itching to get back to a novel I was writing when I first started this book and kind of put on hiatus.
Yeah, I did the same exact thing.
Yep, I'm kind of itching to get to like some sort of web comic that I think would be fun to do. A series of weird, like surreal visions that I've had, like turned into a web comic. And then, maybe someday down in the future, we might revisit this project and do something new with it. Because I feel like it'd be a shame to end it now that we've spent so much time trying to figure it out and understand
Totally.
Like, it feels like a shame to just stop. So I don't. Maybe at some point down the road, we'll pick it up again and do some new stuff. But right now, I'm going to think about that.
Yeah, the last few weeks or last month, I was like, oh no, I don't get to write any more of these stories. Like, this has been amazing. And I'm like, oh, it's over. I don't know. Maybe Shane and I will open a gym or something. Who knows? Who knows what crazy ideas we have?
Yeah. Well, absolutely terrific. Tiki, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we close up?
No, not really. I'm very satisfied by that folklore conversation there, because that's kind of the heart of everything for me when it comes to scary stories to tell in the dark, is that just that kind of like fabric and history and the untangible quality of it. And I think you guys you really have your finger on the pulse when it comes to that. And I couldn't be more excited. I really think the series is in good hands with this.
Thank you.
It's definitely going to be as good as we could possibly make it. Like, looking back, we're not going to be like, oh, we were lazy and we got distracted here, and no, it's as good as we can make it. So, like that's like all we can hope for, honestly.
Nice.
But
right.
Yeah, we're selling it right now. If you want, you can still get pre-orders. Like, I know the Kickstarter was ended, but if you go to our website, scarystoriestribute.com, you can still pre-order it. Like, that's a thing. So I don't know how many people will, but I think we got all the hardcore fans so far, unless they're people that you want to tell. But hopefully they'll be. We can get some more out there, because I'd like to get it into the right hands, because a lot of people will probably really love it.
Now, a question that was on my mind earlier with Scholastic. Has there been any word between you and them, or is it kind of just they haven't touched it? They're not going to. What do you think?
All right, so Scholastic doesn't own the rights anymore. It's HarperCollins.
Oh, okay.
And when we first started working on this project, because I had and I think I won't go into too much detail here. There's some things I can't say, but we made every effort to try to reach out to lawyers and rights holders, trying to get permission to do this in a legal way and maybe even an official way. But what ended up happening was events occurred and things were said to us, and I can't say too much, but basically it became clear that the best route for us would just be to do it self-published and to just do it all on our own, 100%. So no, there's no official capacity here at all, but yeah, at the same time, there kind of is, and I can't say more. That's it. That's all you got.
Well, it definitely feels like it, just from the. If you guys if somebody can capture the tone, the mood, the writing, and especially the illustrations, I think, I mean, that's good enough for me, and I think that's good enough for any fan out there. I mean, it's just a label. I mean, it's just a publishing label, right?
Yeah, and I mean, officially HarperCollins owns the publishing rights. So all along this process, we've been waiting for like some sort of cease and desist for like the cover design or something. And if there was, we were happy to change that, because it didn't really matter. Ultimately, what matters is what's inside. And luckily that didn't happen. So it's gonna. It
would be different if we were selling like 100,000, 500,000 copies, but this is just for like hardcore fans who just want, a kind of vibe of a fourth book, because it's not going to happen. Like, Alvin Schwartz died 30 years ago, and Stephen Gamble didn't want anything to do with it starting 30 years ago. So, you can only it's like fan art. Like, the fans at some point are the ones who have to kind of take the reins artistically, because no one else really will.
And isn't that what folklore is at the heart of it? Is people kind of like taking the reins, taking the mantle, and continuing it. And I really think I really love that kind of sort of full circle quality to the project in that regard.
Yeah, you're right.
And originally, we were just going to make 2 copies of this book, one for me and one for Shane. That was it. Like, we made this book just because we wanted more of this book, more of this like vibe, the art and stuff. And it was going to be just 2 copies. And then we were like, well, after a while, like, well, that's a waste. Like, it was never intended to be like, oh, we're going to go sell books. It's just, we had to share it with people, because I'm sure other people wanted it.
Well, Tiki, we have to be sure to put the pre-order link in the description.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I will, for sure, after this is over. Totally.
Well, if no one has anything else to say, I think we'll close up.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thank you to Shane and Curt for coming on with us and talking with us for this great hour and a half we've had with you guys.
It's like an hour 20 minutes.
Hour
Really
20 minutes.
comfortable runtime there. Not too long, not too short.
And the conversation was really solid. Just thank you two so much.
Yeah, sweet. Thanks a lot, guys.
We could talk about this stuff for days.
Yeah. Talk about a lot of stuff, man.
Well,
All right, folks.
yeah. So thank you, everyone who's currently watching. Again, it's been great talking with you guys. Thanks so much, Tiki, for making this possible.
Yeah, of course, my pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's just about it.
All right, thanks everyone.
See you later.
All right.
See ya.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.